Shalom, this is Daniel Stern of the Netivyah Bible Instruction Ministry coming at you live from Jerusalem, from our building. And today we're going to talk about martial law in South Korea. Martial law was declared yesterday by the president of South Korea, and I want to clarify as much as I can what that means, where it came from, and what happens now. So, let's start. The president of South Korea declared martial law yesterday, Tuesday, by breaking into all the news channels and saying that due to threats from North Korea and communist activities within parliament, he is declaring martial law. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, let's start that martial law had not been declared in Korea for about 40 years. And this is after a period of 30 years that Korea was run by military dictatorships. And only in 1987 did Korea start transition into a full democracy. And what martial law means is that all parliamentary action is stopped. All civilian political action, such as protests, are stopped. All media outlets are controlled by the government, or should be controlled by the government. Basically, it's a tool that was used in the past by the military dictators of South Korea to control their opposition and to control the protests, to crack down on protests and jail critics. Now, I want to stipulate once again, I'm broadcasting from Israel. Yes, I studied political science, but my knowledge of South Korea is limited, especially to the characteristics of the individuals and exactly their motivations and whatnot. I gain my information from news outlets, same as you, and I'm trying my best to clarify the situation. So, the president declared martial law because of North Korean threats and communist actions and anti-state actions within parliament. Now let's go back a little. The parliament in Korea is 300 seats. 190 of them are controlled by the opposition to the president, by the Democratic Party in South Korea, the Republic of Korea, and only 110 seats are controlled by the president's People's Party. Now, what does that mean? It means that since 2002, when this conservative president was voted in, he has been unable to properly execute his role. He has been blocked on all the reforms and all the actions that he hoped to do. I don't know, all is a generalization, but on much of it. Additionally, about 18 of his government and officials have been impeached. And there was talk about impeaching him as well. More information. The president's wife is part of a scandal that relates to whether they received free polls and election analysis information, and in return they elected to the parliament a certain individual. In addition, she's also part of a scandal that relates to some financial scam related to Deutsche Motors imported into South Korea. And there was talk about why his Justice Department didn't pursue allegations against her and cleared her of charges while not clearing other people who were part of the same scandal. So that's some background as to the situation. And now, and of course, we have to say that since there was a 30-year military dictatorship which involved occasional implementation of martial law in Korea, then it's a very touchy issue and very sensitive issue for the citizens. So, here's what happened. He declared martial law, and the army spread out in the streets of Seoul and particularly around the parliament building, but then the parliamentarians rushed to the building with the assistance of citizens and had a vote of 190 to none in favor of lifting the martial law. from my understanding, 12 of the 190 were from the president's party and the rest were from the opposition, but I only recently read that, so don't quote me on that. But in any case, as a result of this vote in the parliament, then a few hours later, the president said that he was lifting martial law. Now, the next question is, what happens now? So, first of all, within the president's own party, the People Party, the head of the party said that he was against martial law and it shouldn't have happened. So now, the opposition party is looking to pressure the president to resign and or impeach him. Another side note is according to mainstream legacy media, the president's approval rating is about 25%, which is quite low. I also heard somewhere that it was down to 10%, but mostly what I saw was 25%. In any case, that's certainly not a majority. By the way, he won the election in 2002, 48.5 to 47.5, so it was quite a slim margin. Anyways, so there's a lot of pressure on the president of South Korea to resign, and there's steps to impeach him in the works. They haven't yet started, but the pre-steps are in the works. Many of his secretaries and his own chief of staff have already resigned as a result of his action. Seems like there's a lot of chaos going on there. Now let's take a moment and step aside. And when I'm looking at this story, most of the news that I read tell me that there is a tyrannical, crazy, authoritarian, possibly corrupt individual who is using powers that he shouldn't in order to quelch opposition against him. And that he's not popular. But when I see news stories about the situation in Brazil before the last election, or in Argentina now, or in the United States in the last 20 years, or in Israel over the last 15 years, or in the Netherlands, then I see the exact same story being told by mainstream media, by legacy media, by left-leaning media about Bolsonaro, former president of Brazil, Milei, current president of Argentina, Donald Trump, president-elect in the United States, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and of course Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The majority of the media sources, mainstream media, will say that Netanyahu is corrupt and unpopular and doing things that he shouldn't, and extending the war for political reasons, and so on and so forth. But my personal opinion is that he is not very corrupt and very popular, and that mainstream media might wish that he gets ousted, similar to all the projections before November 4th that Donald Trump is going to lose, and it's very, very close, and Kamala's great, and not a word salad babbling idiot. And nevertheless, we see the results. Mainstream media is often extremely biased against conservatives. So, I take the information that I receive, even though I shared it all with you as I received it, I take it with not just a grain of salt, but a bucket of salt. Because for all we know, this is mainstream media bashing a conservative leader who's doing his best to help his country. And in the situation that I don't think I mentioned strongly enough is that the left-wing majority parliament, since the moment he was elected, has had a supermajority and has blocked everything he wanted to do. But anyways, so take all of what was said with a grain of salt. Moving on. How does this relate to Israel? Since I'm broadcasting from Israel, from Jerusalem, and we at Netivyah are here in Israel, how does this relate to Israel? Well, South Korea is the 11th largest economy in the world, and it has the largest U.S. base outside of the United States in the world, with 28,500 troops and over 40,000 with family members and so on. South Korea is a very key part in standing up to the axis of evil, to North Korea and its allies, Russia, Iran, China, and so on. South Korea has very good relations with Israel. Last year, it was the fourth largest trade partner with Israel. There was an export of $1.5 billion and an import of $950 million between Israel and South Korea. South Korea has the first free tax-free trade agreement with Israel, and it is the first agreement between Israel and any country in Asia, and it is the first agreement between South Korea and any country in the Middle East. There's very strong economic and security military ties between South Korea and Israel because both countries face a threat on their borders, face enemies with external enemies, as well as, of course, the larger threats of such regimes such as Iran, China, Russia, that are allied with their enemies. So obviously Israel, it's very important for Israel that South Korea remains democratic and free, but also that it leans towards the Judeo-Christian principles that guide Israel, that it leans towards against the progressive liberal principles that are causing Europe and the United States and many Western countries to welcome Islam and welcome Hamas and attack Israel. So in that regard, South Korea has the largest Christian population of any Asian country, at least any of the major ones. I might be wrong. There might be some small one somewhere. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me in the comments. And it certainly has the largest export of missionaries per capita. It is a very Christian, very conservative. It's based on Judeo-Christian biblical ideals, and that is important for Israel and for the West in its battle with Islam, in its battle with progressive ideals that are harming the family and harming the Western countries. So in that regard, I want you to pray that God's will be done regarding the situation in South Korea and, of course, in Israel and in the world. And there are two more things that I want to say before I finish up and wrap up this episode. And the first is I have to make a correction. Last video, I stated that the Kurds are in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Lebanon. And as soon as I was done, and people also addressed it in the comments, I remembered that actually they are not in Lebanon. That was a mistake, and it's important for me to correct myself if I make a mistake so that you guys know that I'm doing my best to be authentic. And the second thing is I want to thank each and every one of you that participated in yesterday's Given Tuesday initiative and supported Netivyah's work in Israel and around the world. Thank you so much. Kudos to you, and God bless you all.